If you've seen this face before, you might understand why I need to like mentally prepare myself. This is Essenceofthought. I'm going to use they because they don't make enough effort for me to call them a she. Fuck it. They are a YouTuber who talk about trans rights, who were on some bizarro cyberbullying campaign against someone called Rachel Oates for like 5 years. Like, it's completely mad. I watched a video about what they called a Tavistock 16, which is 16 trans kids that supposedly committed suicide, but in the span of about 3 years following the initial rolling back of puberty blockers accessibility. You know, basically saying the government has murdered 16 children. Transphobes rely on child logic to poison discussion. And I kind of picked this one because this seems like projection. Like, the amount of conversations I've had on X, which granted, it's a shit platform full of shit people. But even like on YouTube and other places like fucking Facebook, people I've known in real life, it feels like the trans side is not at all averse to using child logic at all. So to me, this seems like it's probably going to be a lot of projection, but hey, this is Essence of Thought. Let's see what they have in store for us.
One of the biggest mistakes a person can make when trying to understand transphobia, or indeed any bigotry, is trying to figure out the rationale behind said bigotry.
That's insane, by the way. Like, you're calling someone's views bigotry, first of all, and then using that to justify not caring about the rationale. Whereas they might not actually be bigoted if you understand where they're coming from. For example, you can support the puberty blockers ban without being a bigot, because maybe your concern is about children making extremely adult decisions that can lead to sterility, you know? You know, I could make that decision myself and did so. You know, I've become sterile, but I made that decision as an adult, having already established well that I'm not having kids myself. You know, thinking that a young teenager or like a child can make that decision, to me, that doesn't really track. So, you know, you can call that bigoted if you want. I don't think that's a bigoted position, personally. So yeah, we're already reframing people's views as like bigotry, and I have a feeling this person is an extremely low standard for what they consider bigotry, like basically anything anti-trans, anything negative about trans people, pretty much. Are they even on HRT? I can't see much going on there. Anyway.
When bigotry is, by very definition, irrational.
Bigotry, by its definition, is irrational. By the way, I want to touch on something else quickly. One way that people end up developing, like, bigoted opinions is due to, like, trauma. So, like, say, this is purely hypothetical, but say, like, you get attacked by, like, a black person in the street one day. You might end up generalizing that to all black people, which is not a fair thing to do. You shouldn't do that. But the trauma can be kind of the fuse for that. That's what lit the fuse for those kind of behaviors. Does it not make more sense to try and understand that and to try and find a way of reversing that, you know, maybe even through fucking therapy? I don't know, not like mandated, but I think actually trying to understand the human being behind the views is quite important. And I think the reason these people are going to say it's not is because they don't want to engage with any of these people, and they want an excuse not to treat these people as people, basically, which I think is wrong. I think everyone needs to be treated as a person. If they're the most fucking terrible person on earth, you still have to remember they're a person. If they've murdered someone, then yeah, maybe there's a lot of rights they probably shouldn't have anymore. But, you know, it is still important, in my opinion, because you're not going to understand anything if you just cut all of that off, sit back in your echo chamber and just call everyone a bigot. Like, this to me is like poison for like trans people. This is the worst kind of thing you could feed your brain. And trans people should not watch shit like this, in my opinion. Not unless they have already got a strong foundation first. Because you need to understand that you're being manipulated when you watch stuff like this.
Said irrationality permeates a bigot's entire philosophy, warping their worldview and even corrupting the very language they use, as we're here to talk about today. But first, a quick content warning for the...
So, we don't want to understand the people. Does this person know anyone that's, like, bigoted? You know what I mean? Have they ever tried to understand someone? I don't know. It seems like we wanna not have our feelings hurt, and to not have our feelings hurt means not interacting with or having any kind of conversation with certain types of people who don't have favorable opinions on us. So what do? We discredit the fuck out of them and find excuses not to treat them as human.
Following. Transmisia.
Oh my god, it keeps getting worse. So instead of transphobia, she says, like, they say transmisia, and now it's like homomisia as well. Like, no one says that. This person has a lot of jargon, but it just means transphobia and homophobia.
Homomisia and sexual violence.
Oh, okay.
If you like our work and appreciate the research put into each video, please consider supporting the channel via Patreon. You can also support us by liking, commenting, and sharing our work on social media. Hi there!
You are a transphobe if you do any of those things. I don't care. This person is the worst person to listen to. You are a transphobe if you support this person. Fuck you, I don't give a shit.
My name is Ethel Thurston, she, her, they, them, and today we're here to talk about how anti-trans bigots rely on child logic to poison everyday discussion.
Anti-trans bigots, there we go. And an anti-trans bigot, by the way, is anyone who has any negative opinions. So I am an anti-trans bigot despite being trans, because I'm not pro-child transition, for example, and I'm not pro-self-ID. I am necessarily then an anti-trans bigot. So I want to see what child logic I'm using, personally. I think this will be great. I'm going to learn so much from Ethel Thurston, she, her, they, them.
So I was browsing Reddit the other day when I came across a post in which someone asked why gender-critical fascists referred to gender-affirming surgery as mutilation and... Gender-critical
fascists. They use mutilation because it's a motive language. It's the exact same shit as you're doing every time you say anti-trans bigots.
HRT as chemicals. And seeing as I have over a decade of experience advocating for the human rights of trans people, this is one I felt I could unpack and thought that you, my wonderful viewers, might also find interesting. So let's get down to business. Starting with how the question has it backwards. That is to say, it assumes that anti-trans bigots looked at the topic and arrived at a conclusion, when they actually started with a predetermined conclusion and changed their language to reflect said conclusion.
Is that true? Can you show that in any cases? Let's have an example, maybe? I'm not seeing any, text on the screen anywhere here, but let's see.
Why? Well, it reinforces their hatred while simultaneously manipulating the people around them to alter their views, not through the application of reason, but through revulsion.
Oh, it's the projection. This person is super fucking manipulative. I worry about anyone in this person's orbit, quite frankly. Jesus Christ.
There are three primal emotions that directly feed aversion, an extreme dislike of something, making those emotions easy targets for hate movements. The two most people are familiar with are fear and anger, both of which are present in the bathroom predator myth, the idea
fear of your treatment getting revoked, anger due to that, definitely can go both ways.
That trans women are in fact men who want access to vulnerable girls and women in order to rape them. These narratives rely on fear in the idea that trans women will assault cis.
That isn't even the argument, really. They're more saying that they want bathrooms to be a single-sex space because women will be uncomfortable. And the thing is, I personally don't think it has to be single sex. I think them being gendered spaces is fine, because anyone that looks like a man in the women's is going to make someone uncomfortable, because that's you're transgressing social norms. And if you're going to do that, the other person doesn't know what else you're going to do. But for a trans person that passes, it's not really an issue, because no one's even really looking at you anyway. You shouldn't be staring at anyone in the bathroom, whether you're trans, cis, whatever, you know? So that's more the argument, is that to them, it can be triggering having a male in a sex place or something. I don't agree with that, but it's not just trans people are going to rape people if they go in the female bathroom.
Girls and subsequent anger in how the supposed threat should be dealt with. But the third and often forgotten corner of the aversion triangle is disgust. That's why phobias in clinical psychology describe all three: irrational fears, hatreds, and disgusts.
I think the disgust part, if I was going to try and make a case for this person pretty much describing their own movement, the disgust thing is a bit harder to prove. But I think that's probably done through like rhetoric. I do need to think about that more, to be fair.
And whilst we rarely discuss revulsion as a tool in politics, there's actually a term for this in philosophy, and that is the wisdom of repugnance, also known as an appeal to disgust, or simply the yuck factor. It is a subcategory of appeals to emotion, and, as such, relies on appealing to an inherent sense of revulsion as proof that whatever it is morally wrong and should therefore be condemned. Much like anger and fear,
I don't want to say that that's necessarily false, but I think the thought process is probably far simpler than that. People see something that's not familiar to them, it looks weird. You know, they see someone like this calling themselves a woman, like that's going to be ridiculous to some people. They laugh at it or don't like it or whatever. Like it's quite simple, really.
Opposite sides of the fight or flight response.
And like, I'd agree it's an emotional reaction, but it's also an emotional reaction when puberty blockers get banned and you're up in arms about it, you know. You actually try and think about it, then you'd have to actually come up with some arguments. You'd have to argue why actually children transitioning is fine and that children can make that kind of decision that early in life that's going to affect the rest of their lives, that might sterilize them, you know?
Revulsion is something that evolved as a means of aiding survival in prehistory. Revulsion to things such as bodily waste or rotting food increased an individual's chances of survival by decreasing the likelihood of catching diseases or parasites, meaning those with a stronger response were more likely to survive and pass on their genes to the
This is true. This person talks too slowly. I'm so sorry.
next generation. This compounded over many generations, leading revulsion to become one of our strongest emotions, right up there with anger and fear. Sadly, it's not a rational response. It's a vestigial behaviour from a time before we understood.
Wait, that's not true. She was saying things that were basically correct, but that's not... Hang on, let me just get that again, because I don't think I agree with that at all.
One of our strongest emotions, right up there with anger and fear. Sadly, it's not a rational response.
It can be a rational response. Like, you know, a disgust response to something you shouldn't be eating is quite rational, you know? I don't know.
Is a vestigial behaviour from a time before we understood concepts such as germ theory, and that means it's easily exploited. If someone can get you as an individual to view something as revolting...
I don't know about that at all. I mean... I don't know. Fuck. I can't be bothered to watch that 5 fucking times to understand what she's saying. I'm just gonna move on.
It becomes incredibly difficult to deprogram that response, perhaps more so than even fear or hatred. This is because people feel it in their gut, literally, physically gagging anytime they sense whatever it is they associate with said response.
I don't know if that's true either. I definitely see things that I'm like, oh, that's a bit... I see people that I'm like that's a bit disgusting. But like, I don't know, I'm able to understand that that's what it is, you know? I'm able to understand that you don't act on shit like that. I think it's probably easier to suppress if you're smart enough to think about why you have those responses, but not everyone is able to, unfortunately.
Yes, fear and anger trigger the adrenal system, but that response seems almost trivial compared to the sudden desire to throw up. And it's precisely because of that irrationality and intensity that anti-trans figures use a language.
Do we think that if someone sees like a picture of a gross-looking trans person, that they're going to feel the urge to throw up? I don't know. I don't think this person understands the thing they're talking about.
Language they do. When they refer to something as mutilation, they are trying to force your mind's eye to visualize trans people on the operating table being cut into with a scalpel. They're trying to get you to visualize the inflamed scar tissue shortly after surgery, along with...
Nah, I don't agree with that. I think they'd have to, like, actually describe it a lot more. They say mutilation because it's an emotive word. It's a bit like you calling them bigots. It's a pretty simple appeal to emotion. And it's a pretty transparent one. Like, we don't need to over-intellectualize stuff like this, you know?
All the nasty stuff that leaks out as the body heals itself. Sometimes they don't even leave it to imagination, stealing photos of gender-affirming surgeries before they have had time to fully heal, all to provoke that revulsion which they can then turn to and go, aha, You see, you know it's wrong. Except here's the thing. The same revulsion can be invoked regarding any surgery. Things are never pretty under the knife or immediately afterwards, these things take time to heal, yet the same rhetoric is never applied to, say, knee surgery or tumour removal. Said yuck factor only matters when it can be exploited as a tool for promoting aversion towards trans people. This blatant double standard in which surgeries are targeted and which are spared demonstrates that the person making this argument knows that such an argument doesn't actually mean anything, but they're relying on you not realising that. I mean, to give another example, just consider the double standard in which surgeries are targeted and which are spared demonstrates that the person making this argument knows that such an argument doesn't actually mean anything.
Well, I think the meaning behind it is more that you're getting like healthy parts of you chopped off, which, you know, you can equate to like female genital mutilation and stuff. So I guess it's kind of from that.
But they're relying on you not realising that. I mean, to give another example...
They're not relying on you not realising that. They're putting it in a strong and emotive term to try and make you think that way about it as well.
Just consider childbirth. Have you seen the reactions of children in classrooms the first time they see the apparent miracle of birth, a euphemism that exists solely as a cover? Revulsion hardly cuts it. And yet, many of those children will, by maturing beyond the logic of a child, come to view said birth as this amazing thing that they one day hope to share with their significant other. And I say mature out of it.
I'd like to think that the children see it as gross because there's all this body shit, body fluids, you know, whatever shit, the kid's covered in stuff. I'd like to think that they probably understand that it's necessary and it's there to give them a life and that they're here because of that whole thing, you know, but it looks gross. I don't know.
Because appeals to disgust are, ultimately, the logic of the immature. It's an appeal to the same basal response tapped into.
He hasn't shown that. That's ridiculous.
Anytime a child raves about cooties. Is that still a thing? Do children still believe in that? I don't know. But back in the day, kids used to believe that boys and girls could transmit some sort of mythical disease through contact. That's what anti-trans bigots are trying to tap into. Playground logic. But
nah. This is weak. This is weak at the moment. Jesus Christ.
Turning to gender-affirming surgery, particularly for trans men and AFAB-MB folk who have undergone a bowel mastectomy, because, let's be honest, that's who are most frequently targeted by this rhetoric, while said scars can look unappealing immediately after surgery, given time to heal, that changes. Like, I've got growth marks on my sides that are more pronounced than some of those scars, so even taking them on aesthetics, which should never be the deciding factor for trans health, just to be clear, it completely falls apart when you sit down to have a mature conversation.
Are they even doing that? Like, I don't think it matter what they look like. They're gonna call them like mutilation scars and stuff. It wouldn't really matter if they looked appealing or not, right?
About what they're picking at. Of course, this is
because they disagree with the surgery itself. Like, Jesus Christ, like, we're really desperate to dehumanize these fucking people, I guess.
nothing unique to gender-critical fascism. This is a method that has been used against marginalized communities throughout history, including lesbian, gay, and bisexual people. One well-known example, at least in the secular community during the early 2010s, was Pastor Semper, better known online as the They Eat the Poo Poo Man. Pastor Semper gained international attention with the release of 2010's Missionaries of Hate, a documentary that exposed how US evangelicals were funding extremist religious groups in Uganda in an attempt to instill and uphold anti-LGBT+ laws. In said film, Pastor Semper describes a number of sexual acts, such as rimming, fisting, and fecophilia, to a mixed crowd of Christians and Muslims. He then rather incorrectly asserts that these are things all gay and bisexual people do, and only gay and bisexual people do.
Well, yeah, he's lying about people he doesn't like. Where have we seen that before? Oh wait, that's what this video is.
All in an attempt to disgust his audience, thereby further turning them against the LGBT+ community as a whole. It is, of course, utter bullcrap. And the same thing can be said about the gender-critical fascist usage of chemicals to describe HRT.
That's ridiculous. First off, HRT are chemicals. Second off, you just can't compare someone being like, oh, all gay people do this fisting thing where they like spread their hand out in your anus after they put their whole fist up there, and HRT is putting chemicals in your body. Like, come on, really? This doesn't make any sense. I don't know what the fuck she is on.
If you're like me and have spent any sort of time in or around secular circles, you likely recognize this as the very same appeal made by New Age quacks when promoting natural healing as the solution to disease. It's a fallacy known as an appeal to nature, the idea that injecting snake venom into your blood must be good for you because at least snake venom is natural.
The thing is, it's more like the gender critical people tend to see trans people as like healthy people getting unnecessary treatments. I think it's a lot more about that, and putting something in your body isn't good straight away, you know. You don't really know how it's going to affect your body. But, you know, that would be assuming that this person has any interest in, like, engaging honestly, so.
Unlike all these synthetic medications. Just unpacking the language here, namely the idea of HRT as chemicals, all hormones are chemicals, regardless of whether they're produced naturally by the body or not. So
there's a plausible deniability there, and they might genuinely be like, excuse me, let me just think about that for a sec. Hang on, let me just get that one more time. My brain is losing it.
Hormones are chemicals, regardless of whether they're produced naturally by the body or not. So this argument makes no sense linguistically.
Yeah, it's like they're not really saying anything that isn't true, I guess. Makes no sense linguistically. Nah, I don't think that holds water.
All matter in the universe has a chemical composition. That's what the word chemical means. And whilst
that never means necessarily that it's fine to put whatever the fuck chemicals you want in your body. And I don't know, I don't think this person's on HRT. I could be wrong. There's nothing going on down here. I don't think they do anything to really transition, as is self-evident. But say they are taking HRT, they don't know what negative effects it might be having on them. The same with me. I don't.
An appeal to nature might seem separate to an appeal to disgust. I'd argue that our hang-ups regarding synthetic hormones and other medications largely stem from our societal views on processed foods, how we've been blasted by adverts, capitalist propaganda, selling us the message that natural is better and artificial is worse. Think about the pink slime of McDonald's food, or Jamie Oliver's crusade to get children off of chicken nuggets by showing them how they're made. Of course, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with processed foods. They're a modern wonder that has saved countless lives. I mean, to be able to take something otherwise unappealing and turn it into something that people not only get nutrients from, but actually enjoy, is great, and it's something that, in a more just system, would be celebrated for reducing waste by making use of byproducts. Processed foods are neutral. The problem rests not with the process, but with the companies trying to get people addicted to their foods in order to...
What? Doesn't it depend on what you're using? Does that not matter? Jeez, I don't know.
Sell more thanks to this terrible thing called capitalism. That's the idea.
There we go, anti-capitalist bullshit. No one cares about your opinion. Anti-capitalists are not powerful anywhere in the West. The UK is not going to become a communist place. This person isn't even in the UK. They're in fucking India or something, which is probably not going to become a fucking socialist state or an anarchist state or whatever either. It's very, very stupid. Who cares? There's plenty of reasons why you might prefer to eat something that is in its natural form as opposed to in a processed form. Like, a processed thing is unlikely to have the same amount of, like, fiber in it, for example. Yeah, this is a pretty ridiculous argument, but what do we expect, you know? As long as we got the anti-capitalist shit out there. Great, well done.
Only behind all this. The people selling us the myth that natural is inherently better are the people who caused the problem in the first place. The ones who packed our foods with terrifying amounts of sugar and salt are the ones sponsoring health groups that allow them to pretend like their food has changed and is even endorsed as a more natural and healthy alternative to their competitors. Such marketing has been very effective.
Well, yeah, but I mean, people can also, like, just buy, like, meat and vegetables and fruit and stuff and skip all of that processed shit entirely if they want to. Like, you know, oh my god.
Effective, allowing corporations to sidestep their personal responsibility to instead hide behind natural-looking branding. Yet that cultural revulsion remains. This idea of disgusting factory processes, allowing it to be tapped into anytime someone attacks synthetic medications, such as HRT.
That is preposterous. Like, the argument is that healthy people are putting stuff in their body that they don't need and wouldn't be naturally in their body because it's cross-sex hormones or something, which comes with side effects, by the way. Like, oh my god. What do you even say to this shit, man? I don't know why I'm watching this person again, except to say that you're a transphobe if you support them, which you are, by the way, because this person is filling your head with shit.
Like most people have drilled into them for years, if not decades, And I think that's why we still have people making the argument that it's chemicals and chemicals are bad, because they're stuck in this irrational mindset. So yeah, I just wanted to...
Well done for dismantling one of the least used arguments against HRT. Congratulations. Fuck me. Jesus Christ.
Bring this to your attention, since disgust, for as strong as an emotion as it is, often gets overlooked or outright ignored, much to the detriment of our causes. We need to be able to spot it, as well as discuss what's taking place, as being aware of how such emotional manipulation takes place is the first step towards becoming immune to it, and I think that is something we should be striving towards. Though what do you think? Are there any other factors at play here? Can you think of any other appeals to discuss? How do you feel about me getting ideas for videos from Reddit? Are there any topics you'd like me to cover?
How do you feel? Hang on, no, I want to hear that one more time.
Discussed. How do you feel about me getting ideas for videos from Reddit?
There we go. We can stop the video there. That's enough. That's fine. That's fine. It's over anyway. Listen, you want a hot take? The real anti-trans bigots are people like this that are making trans people objectively stupider, that are filling their heads with fucking bunk arguments, bunk fucking science and philosophy, bunk fucking psychology, psychoanalyzing people they have no clue about, that they don't understand. I'll tell you what a just world would be. It would be one where it's impossible for this person to make money doing what they're doing here.